Hey there, and welcome. Today, we're going to crack open the fascinating world of organizational behavior.
The answer almost always comes down to the people and the environment. And understanding that whole dynamic is exactly what organizational behavior, or OB, is all about. It's the key to figuring out why some companies are amazing places to work and others, well, not so much.
All right, so first things first, let's get down to the fundamentals. What exactly is this field, and where did all these big ideas even come from?
So, at its core, OB is what you'd call an applied science. It's all about taking these powerful insights from fields like psychology and sociology and, actually using them to solve real problems in the workplace. This isn't just a bunch of abstract theory. It's a hands-on toolkit that helps leaders understand, predict, and even influence how people behave at work.
Okay, this timeline, it shows a huge shift in thinking. We went from Frederick Taylor's idea that people were basically just cogs in a machine where efficiency was the only thing that mattered, to the game-changing Hawthorne studies. And what they found was just incredible. It turned out that just paying attention to people, the social side of things, did more for productivity than anything else. That discovery, the idea that people actually matter, that's what set the stage for the modern, human-focused OB we study today.
All right, let's zoom in a bit. We're going to start at the first level of all this, the very core of any organization, and that's the individual. That's you.
So, one of the biggest things that shapes how you act at work is something called your locus of control. Basically, do you believe you're in the driver's seat of your own life? That's an internal locus. Or do you feel like things just kind of happen to you, all thanks to luck or fate? That's external. Seriously, take a second. Which one feels more like you? It really matters, because someone with an internal locus, for example, is usually way more motivated and more likely to take charge. And then, of course, there's personality. I'm sure you've heard of the classic type A versus type B, right? You've got your type A folks who are super competitive, always in a hurry, and then you've got your more relaxed, easygoing type B people. Now look, modern psychology tells us it's not that black and white, it's more of a spectrum, but this is a really helpful shorthand for understanding different work styles and how they might fit together. Or, not. For a much deeper dive, though, we have what's called the Big Five model. The acronym OCEAN makes it pretty easy to remember. This model looks at where you land on a spectrum for 5 essential traits. So why is this a total game changer? Well, think about it. If you're building a team for a project that needs a ton of fresh ideas, you'd probably want people high in openness. But if you need someone who's super reliable and never misses a detail, you're looking for someone high in conscientiousness. See? It gives you a much richer, more useful picture of who someone is. Okay, now this. This is a fantastic tool for self-awareness called the Johari window. Let's break it down. It shows us 4 different parts of ourselves. The open area is the stuff that both you and other people know about you. Simple enough. The hidden area is your secrets, what only you know. Then you've got the blind spot. This is what others see in you, but you're completely oblivious to. Oof. And finally, unknown is the stuff no one knows yet. The whole point, especially in a team that wants to be great, is to make that open box bigger and bigger through honest feedback and just being more open with each other. Okay, so we've got a handle on who we are as individuals. But what about the why? What's the thing that actually gets us fired up to go to work and do a good job? Let's talk about the engine that drives everything: motivation. You've probably seen this pyramid a million times, right? Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's such a powerful idea because it's so true. The theory is that we're all trying to climb this ladder of needs. And think about it. It's pretty tough to worry about reaching your full potential at work, that self-actualization at the top, if you're stressed about just having a stable job or paying your bills. You got to take care of the stuff at the bottom before the things at the top even start to matter. And Hertzberg's theory has a really interesting twist to this. He basically said there are 2 different sets of factors at play. First, you have hygiene factors, things like your salary, the office conditions, company rules. Here's the catch. Having these things doesn't actually make you happy. It just stops you from being unhappy. So getting a decent paycheck doesn't make you love your job, it just keeps you from hating it. The real motivators, the stuff that makes you passionate about your work, that comes from motivators, like getting recognized for good work, having chances to grow, and feeling a sense of responsibility. Right, so nobody works completely alone, do they? Let's zoom out from the individual and start looking at how we all work together in teams and groups. So it turns out pretty much every team goes through a natural life cycle, and Tuckman's model lays it out perfectly. But here's the one thing I really want you to take away from this. That storming phase, the part where conflict and disagreements pop up, That is not a sign that your team is failing. In fact, it's a totally normal, even necessary stage that a group has to go through to figure things out before it can really start clicking and performing at its best.
And inside any team, you're going to need both management and leadership. This awesome quote from the great Peter Drucker just hits the nail on the head. It perfectly sets up the difference between the two because, and this is key, they are not the same thing. And any great organization needs both.
And here's how that breaks down. Think of a manager as someone who deals with complexity. They're the ones planning, organizing, and controlling things to make sure the trains run on time. A leader, on the other hand, deals with change. They're the ones setting the vision, pointing everyone in the right direction, and inspiring them to get there. One keeps things stable, the other pushes for progress.
So, where does the ability to influence people actually come from? Well, it comes from power, but power has a bunch of different sources. You've got legitimate power, that's just your job title. Reward and coercive power are about your ability to give people good stuff, like a bonus, or bad stuff. But check out the last two, because this is where it gets interesting. Expert power comes from what you know, your skills. And referent power, that comes from people just plain liking and respecting you. The most important thing to remember here is you don't need a fancy title to have those last two kinds of power.
All right, time for our final zoom out. We're going to the widest possible view now, the entire system. We're talking about the invisible force of culture that shapes everything and how a whole organization deals with change.
Honestly, the absolute best way to think about organizational culture is to think of it as the company's personality. That's it. It's the shared vibe, the how we do things around here. It's all those unspoken rules and shared beliefs that guide how everyone acts, especially when the boss isn't looking. And this iceberg model is just the perfect way to visualize it. Above the water, you see the obvious stuff, the artifacts, like the dress code, the logos, the office furniture. Just below the surface, you have the company's stated values, the mission statement they put on the website. But the biggest, most powerful part of the iceberg is deep underwater. That's where the unspoken assumptions live, the real rules of the game. That's the stuff that really matters, and it drives everything. So what happens when that deep, powerful culture actually needs to shift? Well, Kurt Lewin gave us this really simple but incredibly effective 3-step model. First, you have to unfreeze the way things are. You got to break the status quo and show people why staying the same isn't an option. Then you make the movement to the new way of doing things. And this is the part a lot of people forget. You have to refreeze everything to make sure the new habits stick and become the new normal. And really, that's what this is all about, isn't it? The one thing you can count on in any organization is that things are going to change. Organizational behavior, OB, it isn't just some academic subject. It's a real-world toolkit. It gives us the language and the models to understand the human side of business, why we sometimes push back against change, what truly drives us, and ultimately how we can lead each other through the messy, complicated, but amazing world of work. So there you have it. From the quirks of individual personality to the way teams come together, all the way up to the invisible force of company culture, you now have the playbook for understanding the human side of the workplace. The only question left is, what's your next move?